so the past helps us inform our future, but it can be really difficult to move on, especially from disappointments or setbacks. Or, you know, in my audience, I usually ask people to raise their hand if they're an overthinker. And to be honest, I think that 90% typically raise their hand. Most people are overthinkers. And so, when we overthink, we passively and endlessly just let our mind go. And so we need tools to move on, to be resilient, to pick ourselves back up from adversity or setbacks or mistakes or disappointments or regrets. And I think that's a really essential trait of high performers, but we don't naturally do that because of our negativity bias, right? We're typically thinking about what's wrong or what happened in the past that didn't go well, or what's wrong with us instead of what's right with us.
Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. I am so delighted to have Dr. Cindra Kamphoff with us today. Cindra is an award-winning keynote speaker, TEDx speaker, and certified professional coach for leaders, professional athletes, and championship teams. Her clients range from Verizon Wireless, Target, and Bobcat to the Minnesota Vikings. She has also worked with the U.S. Olympic track and field team while they were in Tokyo. Cindra is the founder of the Mentally Strong Institute, which provides one-on-one coaching services to help purpose-driven leaders and athletes multiply their confidence, increase their influence, and get to their goals even quicker. Cindra is the author of an Amazon bestseller called Beyond Grit, 10 Powerful Practices to Gain the High Performance Edge. And her podcast, the High Performance Mindset Podcast, is ranked in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. And I invite you all to check it out. And Cindra, it is such an honor and a joy to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm so grateful. And it's going to be so much fun talking to you. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share a positive message today.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I love your work. And I want for you to share with the audience. I know this is also in the TEDx talk. So I know for those people that are going to check it out, tell us a little bit about your story, because it's such a powerful way to get into this work. How did you get started?
Sure. Great question. I got started when really, my PhD is in performance psychology, but I got started with this interest when I was in high school. So maybe even before, because I used to race the boys in my neighborhood, But when I was in high school, I ran the fastest mile in the state of Iowa. So I grew up in Iowa, and I broke lots of records at that time. Some actually, believe it or not, that still stand today. And so I had these really huge aspirations of getting to the Olympics, and people in my town thought that was possible for me. I was winning all these races, and could I become the town's next Olympian? And that's what I thought. I had these really big, huge, courageous goals. And I got a college scholarship to run cross country and track. But it was there where I was just consistently getting in my own way. I was constantly comparing myself to other runners. I thought that the more I beat myself up, the better I would do. And just very harsh and critical of myself, and my own mental health suffered. I started learning about sport and performance psychology just to understand my own self, and saw a sports psychologist at the time who was actually really theoretical. She wasn't very practical. And so I didn't really know what to do. And by the time I left college, I wanted to quit. It was something that I went from just loving loving and enjoying, and running is still part of who I am now. But I learned a lot from that journey in a lot of ways. I love this Byron Katie quote, and she says, "What if everything happened for you and not to you?" And I think this happened for me because I'm very passionate about my work. I still think about that story a lot. Today I was working with this figure skating team, and I think about where I was when I was in college, and that's really why I still do what I do, is just help people get unstuck and get out of their own way and learn. I try to make my tools really practical and easy to understand, so that people know what to do and they have a toolkit.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful that you shared that story, because I think there are a lot of people, whatever their sport, so to speak, is in life, whatever it is that they're trying to achieve, that they've gotten in their own way and,
Mm-hmm.
maybe started to have some of those thoughts, maybe also believed that, the tougher they were on themselves, punishing themselves, the better the results will be, that they kind of need to push themselves, willpower themselves to get the outcomes that they want, when in reality, that is not the way to do it. It's
Yeah.
just a form of self-harm, really. And what we want
Yes.
is self-compassion, self-acceptance, self-care for us to be able to reach our highest heights. And so your amazing book is called Beyond Grit, and it covers 10 practices for high performance. So I'd love for you to share with our audience, what are those 10 practices that have been researched?
Perfect. So the background of the Beyond Grit book is based in the field of performance psychology. And if you look at, all the research published in it, these are kind of things that stand out that allow people to thrive or be high performers. And so I'll just list the 10, and then we can dive into any of them that you'd like.
Awesome.
And the point of these 10 is that they're called practices. So that means to me that we're not born with any of them. And some days, to be honest, I'm great at some of them, and some days I'm not so great. Like it's kind of a work in progress, you know. So number one is grit, and that means having passion and perseverance for your very long-term goals. Angela Duckworth's work, we know it's sometimes described as the number one predictor of our success. But it means like going after your goals, sticking with them even when it's hard. Number two is about your purpose and owning it, not just knowing what it is, but using it to guide your work. That's Purpose is like pulling back the layers of an onion. It's very hard to really understand what that's about. You and I, we've talked about that, and we're on our own separate journeys. Number three is about mastering your thoughts. So choosing thoughts that are more empowering and, that lift you up, instead of the automatic negative thoughts that tear you down. Four is called Know Yourself to Master Yourself. And this is all about awareness of yourself. What are your strengths? What does it take to you to be at your best? What does that best look like? And that takes a lot of just growing and, again, pulling back layers. Five is dominating the controllables. This is about controlling what you can control. And there's so many things you can't, I have to tell myself this every day. Six is about owning the moment. And we know as a performer, right? We perform all day long, even if we're not in sport. I perform as a coach or a speaker. You perform as a podcast host, right? And so owning the moment is number six. And this is all about training your mind to be in the present. Seven is about choosing empowering emotions like gratitude and confidence. And eight is about authenticity, owning who you are. Nine is about living and letting go, which is very difficult for people. And we can certainly talk more about that. And 10 is about choosing courage over comfort. And all these 10 is really, again, the work in progress, and will continue to help you reach your goals and get to your goals even quicker.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing those. And I'm curious, out of all of those practices, what is like the most difficult for people to really embrace and practice on a regular basis?
Yeah, I've come to understand the answer to this question just from speaking on a lot of stages and working with, different executives or leaders or professional athletes. I think that number 9, live and let go, is the most difficult one for people to practice. And I think the reason for that is because we make meaning based on the past, right? Like even today, as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking about other podcasts I've listened to, or, podcast episodes that you've recorded that I've listened to, right? And so the past helps us inform our future, but it can be really difficult to move on, especially from disappointments or setbacks, or, you know, in my audience, I usually ask people to raise their hand if they're an overthinker. And to be honest, I think that 90% typically raise their hand. Most people are overthinkers. And so, when we overthink, we passively and endlessly just let our mind go. And so we need tools to move on, to be resilient, to pick ourselves back up from adversity or setbacks or mistakes or disappointments or regrets. And I think that's a really essential trait of high performers, but we don't naturally do that because of our negativity bias, right? We're typically thinking about what's wrong or what happened in the past that didn't go well, or what's wrong with us instead of what's right with us.
Yeah. And it's a protective mechanism because our body's trying to keep us safe, or from getting hurt again and re-experiencing emotions that maybe we at the time didn't have the ability to release, resources to be able to move that energy. And it's just trying to love us and keep us safe. So how do we live and let go some of those over attachments, like overthinking? Or, one of the common attachments again from high performers, things like, being, let's say, smart, right? There is, we can believe that we're smart and that can help us, let's say, to get to a certain level. But if we're over attached to that, then we kind of always need to be the smart one. And that can take a toll because that's not, we're human. That's not possible. Or let's say I'm the responsible one. I'm the athletic one. I'm the creative one. I'm the, happy one, whatever that is. And then it can really keep us very caged in a way. That's what I find, because then it's almost like we need to operate that way. People are expecting that of us, like Cindra is the runner, right? For example, right? And there's an expectation. And so it's like, it's a certain level of pressure to live up to that. And there's a healthy pressure, but then there's the over attachment, right? And sometimes we're just human, and what got us to a certain level may not get us to that next level. So how do we live and let go?
So great question. I think I'd love to, well, first of all, share a tool that I think would help people live and let go, and the reason behind that tool. And you mentioned self-compassion. I love the work of Kristen Neff, who really, helped coin this term self-compassion. And she includes self-compassion as three things, like self-kindness, like having the same kindness as you would to a best friend. And sort of berating yourself or, focusing on all the ways you're inadequate. Mindfulness means taking like a mindful approach and just noticing when you're really harsh and critical. And then the last part is common humanity, which means that we all suffer and with something, right? And all of that, the practices of self-compassion is connected to more motivation, higher performance, and more confidence. So this is why we want to live and let go. And the tool I teach in my book and in my keynotes and with people I work with is something called Learn, Burn, Return. And before I introduce the tool, I'd like to tell you a story. Okay. And it's a story about an NFL player that I've worked with for a long time named Adam Thielen. So Adam went to a small college called Minnesota State. I live in Minnesota and I work with the football team. And I work with lots of different football teams, but that's one of the football teams I work with. And just got a $500 scholarship to play football here. So he wasn't, didn't go to any like big time school. And he got an opportunity to try out for the Vikings. And they liked his ability to live and let go and to kind of take it one play at a time. With, and he learned, he continued to master that like through the mental training work I did with the team. So the story I want to tell you about is a story against the Saints. And it was a playoff game where the Vikings were playing at the Saints. And Adam fumbles the ball really early on in the game. Okay. And which means the Saints get the ball. And he goes over to the sidelines and he makes this little action where he puts his hand right by his cheek, right? And kind of pulls it down. And no one really knows what he's doing, besides I know. Okay. Now I want you to imagine like, this game, there was 73,000 people watching this game live, and then 28 million people watching this game on TV. And you make, perhaps the biggest mistake in football in one of the most important games of your life, a playoff game to potentially go to the Super Bowl. And so he, makes this action, and next play he gets right back in. Okay, I'm going to say that fast, and I'm going to snap. Okay, and so because then, the next drive he gets right back in. He's learned to take it one play at a time, and he catches this 43-yard catch over his head. It was absolutely gorgeous. Like no one even expected him to catch this. And he basically set the Vikings up to win the playoff game. So the Vikings won. And afterwards, this ESPN reporter went up to Adam and said, Adam, there's so much pressure on wide receivers in a playoff game, and especially you fumbled the ball, so early. Like, what did you do to move on? Would you like to know what he said?
Please.
Okay. He said, well, I was pretending to flush a toilet. Okay. And the next day in ESPN, the headline that came out said, mental coach taught Vikings Adam Thielen how to flush away his mistakes. I'm like, that's how I get headlined in ESPN, flushing a toilet. Okay, so the
That's brilliant.
actual, I know it's so funny. So the
Wow.
actual tool I was teaching him is learn, burn, return. I actually have some actions for this. So if you want to do them with me, the
Yeah.
actions are you put your fingers on your temples and you say learn, and
Love
then
it.
you snap with the burn like this, and then you put your hands on your hips like a power pose, like a return. Okay. So learn, burn, return. And I love when people do this because they get it into their bodies and they're more likely to remember it. So the three steps are, and you could think about maybe a disappointment or a setback or something that you regret that you need to move on from. The first step is to ask ourselves, like, what did we learn? And you want to use the prompt, next time I will. You know, Zig Ziglar has this great quote, and he said, failure is not is an event, it's never a person. But so many times we take it so personally. So we want to just try to think objectively about it and use the prompt, next time I will. And then the next step we want to do is burn. And if you choose kind of the same, what I call burn phrase or action, like Adam always does the flush in the toilet, I always say that fast, right, with a snap. Um, what happens if you use the same one, you're less likely to overthink and it strengthens a new neural pathway. You know, I would call myself a recovering overthinker because I just kind of I use this every day. Every day. I still overthink sometimes, but use learn, burn, return. So you want to choose, like, let's say, I don't know, even if you channeled your inner Taylor Swift and said, like, shake it off, right? Or brush your shoulder, or say flush it or burn it. And then the return means, again, that's the power pose picture idea. Like, you build yourself back up. And so as an athlete, this is so important because they have to take it one play at a time, one rep at a time. I teach all the athletes I work with, like Olympians, pro athletes, but even like leaders. We might have a tough conversation with a colleague that we need to let go of, so we're ready for the next meeting, right? Or, you know, there's so many setbacks and adversity we experience. So the return is like building yourself back up, telling yourself, hey, I'm meant for this. I got this. And most people kind of do the learn, but they don't always do the burn or definitely don't do the return. They don't build themselves up after. And you know, confidence is one of the strongest predictors of our own performance. So we need to talk to ourselves powerfully, even when we feel inadequate or when we feel like we just bombed.
Wow, I love it. And I love the fact that it's taking like physical actions as an anchor to remind us to do that and to shift and reset as quickly as we can to get those positive lessons. Because those parts of us that are protective need to know that we'll be safe. So as we get new resources, I mean, we both know that, right? Current state plus new resources equals our desired or future state, right? We can't just go
Awesome.
from our current state to our future. We have to get new resources.
Mm,
You know, we have to get
cool.
positive learnings. That's why, right, things happen for us. And so that's a really wonderful way to get the resources as quickly as we can. You know, we can always come back and do some more work on that in the moment if we're especially in a game or in a meeting, you know, if we need to shift and reset quickly. That's a really powerful exercise. I'm so grateful that you shared that with us. And
What
so,
did you say? New plus new resources. I'm going to write that down.
yeah, our current state plus new resources equals our future or desired state. The
Awesome.
thing is that we both know, you know, that voice in the head, those protective mechanisms, those protective parts of us sometimes can inhibit us from getting the new resources. That's why many people dwell or kind of stay in that negative. And so because, you know, those parts just want to make sure that we'll be safe. So the more that we can kind of go into our heart, just kind of like you said, to just pause for a
Hmm.
moment and just say, okay,
Hmm.
next time I will, because there's such compassion in that phrase. It's not judgmental. It's not
Right.
critiquing. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, think about the last time that you got feedback, right? Somebody critiqued you. I mean, that's not fun, right?
Right.
When it's forward looking, right? Next time I will, it's similar to what
Hmm.
Dr. Marshall Goldsmith practices feed forward, which is, you know, it's almost like giving ourselves feed forward, you know, um, positive ideas, resources for how we can do even better in the future. It's not dwelling on the past, which, you know, in that moment we can't change. What's happened, right? That player, you know, he fumbled the ball, right? It
Right.
happened. We gotta accept that it
Yeah.
happened.
Yes.
And you
Hmm.
know, in that moment, say, all right, next time I will, right?
Hmm.
So again, just being very
Hmm.
loving, self-accepting, and
Mm-hmm.
a curious mindset. Because when I ask that
Mm-hmm.
question, right, when you ask that question, it's like it it brings up parts of our mind that are like, okay, in our reticular activating system, what can I do to get even better next time? And so we're able to get those ideas in a
Mm-hmm.
non-judgmental way. And
Yeah.
once we do that, then our body's like, okay, now I can let him, right, continue on, let that go, release it. Now I can let him to do even better. I can give him access to the resources to be able to do even better in the game, right, or in the meeting or whatever that is in our life, and to
Mm-hmm.
create that the outcome. And I think that a lot of people go straight from the current state to like
Yes.
some change to the next thing. They
Yeah.
they don't pause to complete what needs to be completed,
Mm-hmm.
right? To let go of what needs to be let go of before moving on. So I'm so grateful that you shared that
Mm-hmm.
exercise, because the quicker that we can get those positive resources, the quicker that we'll know, parts of us will know that we're safe, that we got the learning. And once we get the positive learning, there's no need to hold on to the emotion, right? To the guilt, the shame,
Exactly.
disappointment, because
Yeah.
we learned from it. We got the
Right.
gift.
Yeah.
So
And I would say like this doesn't, I mean, this is hard. This is hard work. I mean, everything I said, and then you said on top of that, like I'm hearing you and I'm like, yeah, this is even hard for me, and I think just acknowledging that I think it's a daily practice of being kind to yourself
that's right.
and using learn, burn, return, that it's not just something you slip, you snap and you're like, okay, I'm 100% perfect at this all the time. So we're all a work in progress.
Yeah, and this is, I love this because, the key to change is to just give ourselves grace, right? To do what we can. It's not like, did I perform perfectly at the meeting or at the games? No, we want to reflect and say, did I try to do my best? Did I do my best to get that outcome? Because sometimes there's things, as you said, that are out of our controls. We can only control the controllables.
Right.
And just to give ourselves grace, right?
Hmm.
Every
Yeah,
day to
absolutely.
do a little bit better. If we can do a little bit better, that's really all that we can ask of ourselves.
Absolutely. Amen. Amen. Absolutely. Yeah. So don't forget learn, burn, return. What I like about it is it rhymes. You have it's easy to remember. And if you did the actions with us, you're more likely to remember it so that next time it's a little bit easier for you.
Another tool that I love that you share in the book is the truth meter. Tell us a little bit
Mhm.
more about that.
So I love using the acronym ANTS by Daniel Amen. And it just means automatic negative thoughts. And I find a lot of people really appreciate that because the word automatic means I don't always choose the thoughts that I have. And we know, we need to make sure we don't believe everything we think. And the way I would describe it is the best way to talk to yourself is anything that starts with I will, or I can, or I am. Because I think I will is a statement about your intention, and I can is about your potential, right? And I am is who you are. And most of the time, people just kind of let their thoughts go on automatic pilot instead of being really intentional with it. And I love just this idea of ants. We can have lots of different types. We generalize things. We going to go all or nothing. We tend to blame. Those are just a few examples of automatic negative thoughts. And when we notice ourselves believing a thought that is not giving us power, one of the things that we can do is take a step back and use the truth meter. So I use this whenever I'm stuck on a thought, and sometimes I write it out. And writing it out really helps me understand what's the thought I have. And usually it's, yeah, okay, I'll give you like a real personal example. Yesterday, I got some tough feedback because I was late to a meeting. Okay. Okay. And I noticed myself really beating myself up last night and just again, okay, I'm work in progress too. And the thought that I had was I disappointed her. And I don't want to disappoint people. And so the thought I had was I disappointed her. So once I recognized that was a thought, I wrote it down. The truth meter includes asking yourself 3 questions. And the first question is this true? And sometimes our thoughts are true, sometimes they're not. In this case, I think I did disappoint her. So that's, that's probably true. The second question is this thought serving me? And it wasn't serving me at the moment to continue to think about that. And I had to go back to that learn, burn, return. What am I learning here? How can I move on? Because like you can't think about two things at once. So you can't be fully present and still hold on to whatever you're doing, right? And so the second question is this thought serving me? Most people say, no, the thought's not serving me. And then the third question is, of the truth meter is what's a thought I could choose right now? And the power of that is we likely can always choose a different thought. And what's powerful about this is just three quick questions. It helps you take a step back, examine the way you're getting in your own way, and it gives you just like a little tool to really choose something more powerful, right? And so, my choice of the powerful thought I was going to take from this lesson was, I would do everything in my power to be on time or be early for this person, especially, right? Be early. And so the power of this is when I work with Olympians, for example, I mean, there's so much pressure. Olympics only happens every 4 years. And you can get in this space and it can feel really big. And then you see other people competing, let's say in something like the long jump or the high jump, where you watch your competitors. It's really easy to compare. And then all of a sudden it's easy to think like, I'm not fast enough or good enough or blank enough, and it's like, all right, take a step back. Is that actually true? Or is just your thoughts just on automatic pilot right now?
Yeah, so powerful. I'm so grateful that you do this work in the world because oftentimes we have thoughts that are not true and or not serving us, and
Right?
and it goes back to that self-acceptance, self-compassion, and
Yeah.
what can we learn, right? So your new resource in this example was, right, to do your best to arrive early next time, right? So so that you can get even better results. And I think that this is such an important like pattern interrupt,
Yes.
to tap into the truth meter and then, the other tool, because many people dwell, like we said last time, like, earlier, there's, a lot of people can stay in that, oh my gosh, I disappointed her. What does this mean about me? What does it mean about me as a person? What would it mean for my career? What is she going to say about me? Right? Like we can tell ourselves so many
All
stories.
the stories.
Yeah.
All the stories.
Before we know
Yeah.
it, we're in that depleted place where we don't have a lot of energy. We're probably just exhausted because just it zaps our energy. And we're less
Mhm.
likely to show up in a resourceful,
Mhm.
empowered way, with others to serve in our highest and best way. So we're not only hurting ourselves,
Mhm.
also hurting others.
Yes. Yeah, and I think what you just said is really important that it's like the story we're telling ourselves about the event, right? And we can always tell ourselves a new empowering story. And it's about first awareness of what's the story we're telling ourselves. I don't know if I told you this, but I was at the Boston Marathon bombing in 2013. And it honestly, it changed my whole life because I was just a couple blocks from when the bomb went off. And as you could imagine, like, I mean, there was rumors that there was a bomb in our hotel. And so I could go into it in a little bit more detail if you'd like, but I think what I learned from that event was I had some post-traumatic stress when I got back, but what I learned from it was that it in that moment where I would, right after my race actually really didn't matter. It was the things like my purpose and my family that mattered the most. And I saw it as an opportunity to really figure out what my purpose was. Like if I thought it was the last day of my life, right? Like I thought I was playing pretty small. And I changed everything after being at the marathon. I wanted to work for the Vikings, but that was scary. Gosh, I didn't play football. I wanted to write a book, but would everyone critique it? And so, I think it's the story you tell yourself about the events in your life that really make a difference. And I think being there actually did happen for me because it helped me kind of wake me up to my own purpose.
And we're all benefiting from that.
Yeah, thank you for saying that.
Yeah. I'm
Mhm.
glad that you're
Mhm.
well. And I truly have a belief that as I sense that you do, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, that we are where we are and we're meant to be where we are. And if we don't like where we are or aspects of
Mhm.
where we are, we can absolutely change it. And starts by first changing our energy, right? Our thoughts, our emotions, which goes to the high performance practices, right? On a consistent basis, how to change the default way that we think, the default way that we feel. And then we're going to be able to access the new resources, which will help us to take the actions to get the results that we want.
Yes, completely agree.
And to have a lot of love for ourselves in the process, because, as you know very well, it's not really about getting to the finish line, so to speak, of our own personal race. It really is about what we learn in the process, how we grow, how we evolve, how we raise our consciousness, the kindness that we give to others, and to ourselves. That's really what it's all
Mhm,
about. Sometimes
mhm,
it's hard to remember that, in the
mhm,
moment when the goal
mhm,
seems to be such a big thing. And when we're so over attached to an outcome, it becomes a part of who we are, like with your high school experience, right? Like being perceived by yourself and others as the best of the best, right, in your area for this, even to this day. It can sometimes, when we can get over attached to that, um, it can really get us into a place of fear of what if I
yeah.
don't? And it's part of our identity. So the loss of that is a loss of identity. So tell us maybe a little bit more about that as we kind of come to completion here. What was that process of completion for you when you let this go last year of college? You said, just
Mhm,
completely let go of the sport, as other than, of course, your own personal fitness. What
mhm.
was that grief like? What was it like to live and let go of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I think my learning really came as I was, the reason that I actually do this work and why I got my master's and my PhD in this area was because of trying to understand my own experience. I think as I was working on my degrees, I got more clarity on that. I think there was also another moment where, like after I had my two boys, I got back into marathoning and I just got back into running. And then I had different skills, right? Because I had been learning about them in my degrees. And so that gave me just, um, you know, uh, some goals to go after and use these different mindset skills. And then I felt like I was able to kind of redeem myself for in my own mind and just recover from some of that. I still feel like it fuels me. And what's interesting is, um, I have this phrase called the watch me mentality that I've noticed like really great pro athletes who get highly criticized, let's say in the newspaper or on ESPN, they take the criticism or the difficulty and they kind of say, watch me, and sometimes they can go to extreme and like use that too much to become angry, but a certain right of fuel of like, hey, kind of you've maybe heard people say like, why not me, right? And so I think getting back into my own running helped me work through some of that. And I still use the learn, burn, return today. Like yesterday, I was driving to work with this team and I drove kind of by where I raced in high school, and I'm like, just got back to that part and I tried to remember like all the great moments I had and how I can even learn through the difficulties and the difficult moments and how that's shaped me today, just like it shaped everybody who's listening.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. I am so grateful for everything that you've shared and, for also giving people hope, I sense, that if they do fumble the ball, so to speak,
Yeah.
that, there are practices that they can do to not only get better results, also to feel better, to forgive themselves, to live a better life, a more joyful life. And
Yeah.
and that's what this is all about. How can we learn even more about you, your keynotes, your amazing programs?
Thank you, Vern. Thanks for asking and thanks for having me on. People can head over to Dr. Cindra, so DrCindra, and all the information is over there. I have two books right now, Beyond Grit and Beyond Grit for Business, and working on my third one. So we'll see when that's published, but just finished that up. And then we have some really cool stuff like we have a mentally strong coach certification that we deliver. So people want to learn more about the 10 practices and use it in their work. Or if people are interested in our coaching, we do one-on-one coaching with executives and leaders and athletes, and people can go visit mentallystrong.institute.com. So that's where I tell people to head over and just reach out. And if you liked anything that you heard today, or if you want to learn more, we can figure it out and jump on a call. And would love to communicate with anybody who's listening who feels like this really sit with them today and move them.
Thank you so much, Cindra.
Thank you, Bert. I appreciate you having me. Great job with the podcast. And I loved your contributions. Current state plus new response equals future desire state.
New resources. Yeah.
New resources. Oh, what did I say?
New response.
New response. There you go.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's do that again.
And response. Okay. Should I say that again?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much for having me today, Bert. I loved everything that you added, and specifically your equation that I wrote down: current state plus future resources equals future desired state. I love that.
Yeah, I'm grateful. And it's actually not mine. It was, I read it in a book by Dr. Robert Dilts, who was also a guest on the podcast. And it's true. And so thank you again. Oh, my love.
Keep up the great work.
Hey, game changers. I hope you got lots of great insights from my conversation with Cindra, all about how to embrace a high performance mindset. And if you want to learn even more on the topic, I highly recommend that you check out episode 182 with Brian Johnson. We talked about how to be essentially your best self every day. He is also an expert on high performance, really about having a discipline and kind of high performance mindsets and strategies and so on. So I hope you will enjoy that. And thank you. Thank you for being a member of our community, checking out these episodes. And if you want to learn even more, you can download the Momentum Institute app. There's a free course there on mindset. I hope you'll enjoy it. All my love. Bye for now.